Thought we'd just start with sort of what is the enemy of engagement. As you might have guessed if you've looked at the cover of the book, the enemy of engagement is workplace frustration, and we're going to talk a lot about that and what it is and why it's important and how to deal with it. But let's just reiterate, John already did a nice job of talking about what engagement is, but let's just reiterate very quickly so we're all on the same page. About 7 years ago when Mark and I started the research behind the book and the information that we have in the book and our sort of rethinking of the work environment and managing employees, we did a very exhaustive literature review of employee engagement. And what we found sort of surprised us, at least initially, and then we realized it really shouldn't have surprised us. Everyone talks about employee engagement a little bit differently. They use different phrases, different words, but fundamentally we're talking about the same thing. And again, that shouldn't have surprised us because really this has been researched for well over 30 years now. And really what are we thinking about? We're thinking about two components to employee engagement. One is a commitment component, so a psychological and emotional attachment to the organization, an alignment with the organization at an effective level, and a desire to remain with the organization. We're also talking about discretionary effort, the willingness to go above and beyond. So I'm willing to do more for the organization than just simply working to the rules of the job. So those two basic components.
One of the things we do right at the outset of the book is introduce this concept of workplace frustration as an important organizational issue and one that perhaps organizations aren't thinking about as much as they should. And the reason we spend a good bit of time in Chapter 2 setting up this notion of workplace frustration is because we all carry around commonplace notions of what that word means, right? Many of you may have experienced frustrations before coming here today. Certainly John would say you didn't experience any frustrations once you got here, you're well taken care of. But perhaps on the way here, your car didn't start, you couldn't find a parking place, you were looking for a cup of coffee in the lobby not knowing things would be so well catered here and you couldn't find one. These are frustrating things. Well, a dictionary definition of frustration would be something that blocks the human will from achieving a desired fulfillment. So frustration is the feeling we get when we want something, but we can't get it. The interesting thing about frustration, too, is the stronger that desire for something is, the greater the urgency to get or achieve something, the greater that feeling of anxiety, discomfort, or frustration that comes from not being able to achieve it. The Buddhists, in fact, have a saying, which some of you may have heard, wanting is pain. Now, they mean it in a little different context than we're going to use it here. A little more spiritual. But I think that the message translates. If we don't want something, or if we don't want anything, we're not going to feel frustration over not being able to get things. Now let's carry that into the workplace. Commonplace notions of frustrated people at work may call to mind people who walk around with long, sad faces, complain a lot, concerned over trivial matters, boy, the thermostat's never set at the right temperature. Boy, my chair's uncomfortable. Is this all the food we have in the kitchen? That level of frustration. That's not what we're talking about in the book. Frustration is a problem, as we term it, that strikes not the disaffected, disengaged, turned off, dissatisfied employee, but the highly motivated or engaged employee. The people that managers have succeeded in aligning with organizational objectives, energized and engaged with organizational goals, anxious to do the right thing, achieve their objectives, help the organization with broader goals and priorities, but held back in some way by the roles in which they find themselves or the work environments in which they're working. And it's those people that suffer most from a frustration standpoint and represent the biggest lost opportunity for organizations, because after all the investments that organizations have made to build a core level of engagement, many of them are finding that they're not translating that motivation into productivity because those engaged people aren't able to channel their efforts productively. That is, that motivation kind of exists as a potential energy in the organization, but it's not being harnessed effectively by leaders and managers.